Sean, open it up.
Okay. All right. I'm sure the first question is, why the heck are me and Les at our houses and you guys are at the draft house? And, long story short, we had a person that got COVID that Les and I were both close contact traces with. Wanted to be smart. Neither of us is affected by this, but just following the protocols, we wanted to be smart, and hopefully as long as we remain asymptomatic and our tests come back negative, which that's what's occurred over the last couple of days, we'll be able to have fun, and maybe I'll be able to take my shirt off when we draft, like Cliff Kingsbury said. But other than that, hopefully you guys are enjoying that.
Sean, just to confirm, you guys have both taken a test and the test results were negative?
Yeah, that's correct.
When did that all happen? When did you become aware of it?
That happened yesterday.
More tests to come.
What is the clearance protocol for you guys to be able to have an in-person event here?
Yeah, I think the bottom line for us, and really, it was more of let's be smart, let's be safe, let's take the next couple days to ensure that up until and really through Thursday, everybody remains asymptomatic, their tests come back negative, and as long as that's the case, then we'll be able to get it going on Friday. And we don't expect much action from us on Thursday unless we maybe trade up into the first round, which, knowing Les and the Rams, you never know, huh, Les?
Yeah, I hear there's a few picks for sale. The Falcon, maybe we move up to 4, see what happens.
Yeah, that's right.
Sorry, just to confirm, you guys, regardless of where you're at in testing and whatnot, won't be here on Thursday?
Yeah, that's not the plan. Is Friday will be the first day that I'll be there.
When you guys start drafting in the second round, Les, are you able to kind of share what you guys will be looking for?
You know the answer to that, Lindsay. I won't even have Les waste his time with that. Come on now. You're better than that.
You got to ask the question, Sean.
Go ahead, Les.
How do I answer this to try to be interesting too? But I think like we have in the past, we try to work and figure out, right, which players at what positions might be in and around, as we've said, swimming in that part of the pool. A little bit harder to do, easier said than done sometimes. So you somewhat got to wait and see how the draft unfolds, and as it gets closer to 57, at that point in time, you can get a feel for what positions may, there could be a run on certain positions, and you can manage the strategy from there, and whether, hey, do you go grab somebody, do you wait and catch whomever falls, or do you move back and try to grab more capital? But at the end of the day, we've tried to prepare for as many scenarios as possible. But really, you're looking at probably multiple players at multiple positions, because there's 56 at this point in time. 56 teams get a say before we do.
Les, when you guys were organizing your draft board, did you see a lot of passion in the room about guys who might be available falling to that pick point, or is that a little bit more purgatorial? And might you guys explore trading down?
No, we got a new term in the building thanks to Raheem Morris, the magic of Raheem Morris. Obviously, y'all probably interviewed him. So very passionate, vibrant, brings energy every day. But he definitely termed a new term, and probably a new grade that we'll implement. It's called the pool party grade. So at that point in time, if there's a few players at a few positions, and I know he's on the defensive side of the ball, but I know the offensive staff joined in as well. But there's a few players that that maybe as Raheem termed it, we'd have a pool party if they fell and we were able to grab them. But to be determined, to be continued. But we'll see.
And do you guys have you guys had exploratory conversations with other teams about the possibility of trading back? And if so, how early did those start for you?
I'll answer. Right now, the answer is we GMs start talking this time of year. The answer is a yes on a few. Historically, when you're picking 57 a little late in the second round, at the end of the day, there's a supply-demand factor that comes into it. But historically, those picks have been traded often because a team that may be sitting in the third round maybe has more capital to move up just to jump a few teams. So, but I do think the exploratory talks will continue between now and then, but again, happen a lot on Friday. But I think at that pick, right, there'll have to be teams behind us that a player falls to that pick and they want to go get it. That's kind of how those economics work.
Les, with Austin leaving in free agency, is there someone in-house who you guys anticipate taking over at center, or is that perhaps a position you'll still be looking to add to?
I think we've definitely discussed some internal candidates. I'll let Sean, if you want to follow up on that. And yeah, definitely like every draft, right? We evaluate the center position and try to stack those players as best as possible. But Sean, you might want to elaborate on our discussions from within.
Yeah, there's absolutely candidates in our building right now, Lindsay. Brian Allen's a guy that started at the center position, Coleman Shelton. And then we've got starting caliber guards or guys that have started at guard that absolutely have the position flex. So one of the things that we've tried to do over the last couple of years is really have some position flex, especially with those interior players, but definitely have more than enough guys in-house. And that's something that we feel really confident about.
Your last first-round pick was Jared Goff. Was wondering, Les, if you could explain what the first round is like for you. And Sean, you haven't had a first-round pick since you've been here. What's that like for you?
Go ahead, Les.
It's good question. How do you answer it? I mean, I think the first round is obviously a place where there's some talented players. I think based on kind of where we've been as a team, where we've been consistently picking since Sean has been here, we've been able to win some games, contend for divisions, advance to the playoffs. You're picking later. So even when Sean and I did have a first round pick a couple of years back, we did determine instead of picking at 31, it might be better to move back and collect capital. So right now in this phase, we've determined to use those picks in a creative way to maybe go get some more known players that can come in and help us right now with less projection and development. Or we've used that pick to add draft capital to get, let's call it, instead of just one player, maybe two or three. So it has been a while. It's a fun place to pick, and it's even fun when you're let's call it one of our former teammates, Brad Holmes and Ray Agnew. It'll be fun watching those guys it's been a long time since we've picked, let's call it top 10, and you're in that pool. That's definitely a different swimming pool than we've been swimming in lately.
Les, how much has COVID impacted the draft evaluation, and how is that going to impact, taking a player and comparing him versus the information you've gathered on players in years past?
I think it has impacted the process. I don't know if the process has been, and it's been more in maybe let's call it when certain data comes across your desk or is made available, right? Instead of having a lot of workout numbers at the combine in the middle of February, if you're looking for, the LSU's linebackers numbers, you didn't get them till yesterday, right? So there's been some delayed gratification in that type of thing. I know Reggie Scott's been huge with a huge, let's call it organizer, logistics idea person in getting the medical situation where it was a little more consolidated. I know that's been probably a logistical nightmare if you say it. So, but end of the day, there's been impact, but I'm not sure it's been an impact where, okay, you can't draft successfully. And I'm not sure there's really been much of an impact other than when information is gathered, collected, and when you're able to analyze it.
Sean and Les, can you take us through what went into the decision to sign Deshaun Jackson, and what do you think he'll bring to the offense?
Yeah, I think, first of all, Gary, the history that that I have with Deshaun and talking through some of the things that we felt like would help add to our offense. Really smart, explosive player. I know he's had some injuries over the last couple of years, but we are confident in his ability. I mean, you even look at the impact that he has. He comes off the broken ankle, has an explosive long touchdown where he's just floating past Dallas late in the year. I want to say it was in late December. So he brings an element to our offense where he adds to an already, really solid receiving group with, Robert and Cooper kind of headlining that group, a really ascending player in Van Jefferson. And, with the different amount of personnel groupings that you want to activate, being able to have 4 and 5 guys that you feel like can make major contributions from the receiver room is something that we valued. And, he's known for the ability to stretch the top shelf of the defense and create and add to some of those explosives, but it certainly isn't exclusive to that. And being able to come back home and the experience, there was a lot of things that led to it being, something that we were excited about the possibility. And fortunately, we were able to, get it done. And real credit to Tony Pastors for being able to figure out a creative way to add a player of his caliber.
Les?
Gary.
Yeah. Just wanted to get your, I'm sure it's not much different than Sean's, but from your perspective, how did you go about identifying him as the guy that could fill that role for you?
Deshaun, correct?
Yes.
Well, I think you just two ways you can do it. You can go to our film and you can sort by, let's call it, big plays and explosive plays and over the last few years and watch all of those and go, okay, even though he's an older gentleman, he still roll, and you can tap into some of your next gen stats and go, okay, yeah, he's still running with the young guys. So I guess some people are born to run, but he's a pretty simple eval based on the resume that he's put on film, on ESPN highlights, on the grass over the years. So Jack, to have him.
Sean, what's it like between you and Les when you're in the draft room together? What's the dynamic like?
I think one of the things, Maria, that Les and I have always really had such a good rapport is I think we see the game through a very similar lens. Even going back to when I first got the opportunity to interview for the job, I remember feeling an instant, connection in terms of the things that we valued, what it looked like to operate really in all 3 phases, offensively, defensively, and in the kicking game. And really, I respect the work that he puts in. You can feel the way he's studying it. He loves football. He's passionate about that. And so I think, as with any good relationship, the more that we've worked together, the more I appreciate the rapport and the consistent communication and dialogue. And I think as much as anything there's a comfort in being able to maybe not necessarily always agree, but being able to come to, an agreement that, hey, whatever decision we make, we're making these decisions collectively. And, it really hasn't happened often that we don't see it through the same lens. I can't think of many times. And that's something that you don't take for granted. And I think it's a real credit to, the way that he approaches it. And, I think just the natural rapport that's kind of always been existing between us, where you got good, good feel for one another and just good overall chemistry.
Les, for you, same?
Yeah, I hope so.
Well, it's interesting. Our roles are reversed. It seems like during the season, be maybe a calming presence for Sean. And then, I mean, now maybe at the he gives me that look. And interestingly, sometimes, again, it's a little similar to maybe calling a game, but Sean can be a very calming presence for myself. It's been awesome partnering with him and the staff, right? And there's this chemistry and of seeing football through similes of that we're looking for in football players, and then working with his staff on real skill sets at what specific positions in what role can help the Rams, and that's what we're going to try to attack on Friday and Saturday.
Wondered what you're seeing from your NFC.
Can you all imagine Sean's presence? Hold on a second. Can you imagine Sean being a calming presence?
Very fun.
When you look around at your NFC West rivals, what are you seeing in terms of what they've done so far this offseason, what they could get done in the draft? Either of you? Les?
We were having some technical difficulty, and I was having fun watching Sean's facial expressions. Can you repeat the question? I know you discussed the NFC West and all the moves that was going on, but to answer it correctly.
Right. What are you seeing from your rivals in the NFC West, the moves they've made and what they could do in the draft?
From a big picture, it does seem like, right, we're all probably aware of kind of the window we're in. We're all trying to, let's call it, get an edge on one another. And that being said, we're all being, aggressive in the way we're trying to get an edge on each other. So I think it's a competitive league. It's a very competitive division. And each team is definitely well coached, have really good players, and we're all trying to maybe stay ahead of each other as best we can, and as aggressively as possible.
Sean, what are you seeing?
Yeah, I think a lot of the same, Kevin. I think the main focus is always about, kind of looking at ourselves, but you definitely want to be mindful of those matchups and those things that are going to be really important, because the first goal that you have every year is going to be to try to win a division. So I think you closely look at the different things that each of these teams is doing, and what do we feel like is the best way to present and pose matchups that are favorable for us, so that, ultimately when you see these teams twice a year, you give yourself a chance to be able to create those edges, because it's such a small margin for error in this league. But, it's a really competitive division. They do an excellent job, all three of those teams. And so, for us, our focus and concentration is on building this team the right way, doing a great job with the offseason program that's, now in the second week. And, you definitely keep an eye on it, but our focus and concentration is on ourselves right now.
Hey, Sean, as you sit with.
Lindsay, 1 second. I wanted to just clarify too. And then I think the teams, what everyone's doing is not necessarily just to beat one another. It's to, let's call it, contend in that division and go on to maybe bigger things. So I know Sean alluded to that, but that's what I was trying to say. The moves being made weren't just the 6-0 in the division per se.
Hey, Sean, a lot has been discussed about this offensive line class in particular and the depth of it. And I'm wondering, as you sat with Kevin Carberry and talked about format and scheme and maybe rearranging a couple of guys, what you guys landed on in terms of traits that you're specifically looking for in some of these guys for the future?
Oh, yeah. Is that Jordan that asked that question?
Yeah.
Yeah. Jordan, that's all we've been doing for the last couple months. I think it all starts with, how do you make sure with what we have, what do we want to be And then how is that gonna, express itself as we get on the grass and get a chance to work with these players? But there will be a lot of continuity that we'll be able to keep. I think the best thing that happened to us, that was kind of a blessing in disguise going back to a couple years ago, is the depth that we were able to develop with a lot of different guys being forced to play earlier than maybe we ever anticipated. I think last year we saw the benefits of that. And then I think really going into this coming season, you've got a lot of depth with guys you feel really good about that have some position flex. I mean, seen Bobby Evans start at guard, at tackle. You've seen David Edwards and Austin Corbett both start at the left and the right guard spots. You've seen Joe Noteboom start at the guard spot and the tackle spot. And so that position flex is something that's extremely valuable and beneficial. And I'll tell you what's been really helpful is Kevin Carberry, the mastery that he's had from recruiting and a lot of the crossover with whether it's Pac-12 guys or even just when you're looking at a lot of these linemen now that are coming out, he's got a great command of this draft class because he was at Stanford for 3 years. And I've really, really enjoyed working with him and the rest of our offensive coaching staff and Les and his group and collaborating and kind of understanding, all right, where are there some possible players depending upon where we decide, if we decide to utilize a pick on an offensive lineman that can add depth or provide real value for us. And those are things that we're excited about seeing how this week unfolds, but a lot of good options. And that's a huge part of what the last couple months have entailed, Jordan.
Les, what was the thought process of signing punter Corey Ojorquez, and how does that affect Johnny Hecker's status, if at all?
Yeah, I think that I will put that under I call it the Nickel Roby bucket. And every year during free agency, right, in the bells about the ring, each team gets a waiver wire and has all the lists of the unrestricted free agents on it. But there is this subset of list of players who weren't tendered by their club for a reason. And I know Nickel Roby was one of those players, Ramik Wilson, if you remember him. So I know our pro staff, it was, this year John McKay's been leading the charge with the, Ray leaving for bigger and better things and Matt Wall working with him. But I know, the punter was one that they recommend as someone that had a very good year, didn't get tendered for whatever reason. So to the Nickel Roby signing, the Ramik Wilson signing, us signing Doug Hodges this year, claiming Austin Blythe or Troy Hill or Darius Williams. It's when a player comes available, chance to add. And I think, obviously Johnny's resume speaks for itself. So, and right now I think we got the most specialists of probably anybody in the league. We have probably 7, probably got two kickers, 2 punters, 1 guy who can kick and punt, and 2 long snappers. But I know we began that a little bit last year because during COVID, if you did have an outbreak and you did lose some players, if you lost a corner, there's usually 3, 4, 5 others that you have an answer for. But with the specialists, if you lose in contact tracing, there's really no answer. So it goes under that bucket.
So just to clarify on Gary's question, Les, so this is not a punting competition, is that what you're saying? Or is it a punting competition?
No,
Well, I think anytime you go to the practice field, it's a competition, but yeah,
it's not.
Sorry, you're breaking up, so thanks, Sean, I appreciate clarifying.
So it's not.
Hey, Sean, talking about some of those position players, you guys met with Center Fleet Maynard. How big of a priority is getting a good center in the draft?
I'm sorry, Claudia, I heard the latter part of it. Did you say how big of a priority is getting a center?
Yes, in the draft.
Yeah, I think, I think it's not something that you feel like you have to fill because we've got a lot of guys in-house that we feel like are more than capable of being starting caliber NFL centers. And so, if it's something, depending upon how everything falls, it might be something that you address, but I think the one thing that's been really good, and Les and I have talked about this, and it's a real credit to Les and his group and really everybody in its entirety, is that we don't have any major glaring holes. Where it's like, okay, you've got to address this position or else, we're not really asking anybody to feel like they have to come in and immediately start. You are trying to provide depth at some positions. There's different things based on the personnel groupings offensively or defensively that we want to try to fulfill. There's some different things that Joe DeCamillis and Dwayne Stukes are looking for to help kind of fill out the way that we envision trying to be one of the upper echelon special teams units and outfits in the league. But that's something that if it happens, it happens. But we feel more than comfortable if we don't draft a center that we can fulfill that with the guys that we already have on the roster right now.
Sean, you mentioned special teams. Are you comfortable with the Simba there right now, or do you feel like you need to get a returner in the draft?
It's a good question. I think Simba did some really nice things. Obviously, adding Deshaun Jackson, he's had some experience in history returning punts, but I don't think you can find enough guys that have the ability to influence and affect the game when the ball's in their hands. And certainly those returners. And hopefully, if we continue to be as successful as we were and as we've been over the last handful of years defensively, that punt return unit and operation is extremely important. And, we've got guys that are capable, but if there is somebody that provides return value, that certainly makes them more enticing. When you look at some of these receivers or guys on the back end that can also provide, real punt return and kick return value for Coach DeCamillis and Coach Stukes, it's definitely something that we take into consideration as well.
Tom, what do you value more in that position? Just getting your offense on the field and him catching it, or a guy that can take it to the house?
Well, I think both are really important. Coach DeCamillis, you're looking for guys that can score points, but I think, it's all of those things. It's ball security, it's decision-making, and then it's ability to be able to create, hit those vertical seams, make people miss and get vertical. But the guys that can ring the bell, as Joe DeCamillis would say, are certainly the ones that are the most enticing and the guys that you want, but hard to find them. They're rare guys, but I think, you've got to be able to, number one is the ball security and the decision-making. And then the explosiveness and the ability to create after that is, are the things that you'd love to be able to have, but there's very few that can actually check all those boxes.
We get a couple more, guys.
Les, how would you assess this year's draft class of inside linebackers?
I'll keep my true assessment in-house. So I hear there's maybe first round, right? But it's, the one thing I will say is with the inside linebackers, it's interesting. The interesting part of evaluating inside linebackers, how the game's changing, seeing who's playing it, how college football, how college defenses are utilized. Player, you can watch again the kid that ran yesterday at LSU go out, transfer from North Dakota State and go cover number 3 receiver often in the slot, similar to what nickel corners do. So it's fun. It's an assessment of trying to work through what types do we have, what types do we need, who can help, also cover kicks and those type things. So that's a very important position to scrutinize.
Sean, you mentioned not having major glaring holes to fill. Is this draft unique or different for you in that way? Have you had that before?
It's a enticing spot to be in because you can truly let the draft unfold and I call it, right, quotes, take the best available player, because best available player can be subjective. Our best available, maybe, another team's not best available. So that's subjective. But what it does is it gives you a little bit of freedom. This year we were probably at this point in time, I don't know if we let it out in a press conference, but we're pretty intentional about attacking that running back spot. Maybe this year a little bit different, so it gives you that flexibility. But, you know, that's the nice thing about where we're at and as a football team.
Hey, Sean, how do you evaluate a player that opted out last season coming into the draft? Are you going to lean more on like intangibles, and you see that as a coach, you can put some of those intangibles on the field?
Yeah, I think, Les and his group do such a great job with the background. The tape is always the best guiding light. And, so you go back to their 19 film and you use that as the most important reference. And then the character is all a big part of it. And Les and his group do an outstanding job of vetting these players and really our coaches as well. But, it's all part of it. But the most important thing that guides our decision-making is first and foremost, the tape. And you don't punish a guy. This past year has certainly been, I think one that is different in so many ways, but you don't punish guys for that. You go back to the tape, you look at what they've previously done, and then there are some projections with guys that maybe have less tangible evidence on the tape, and it all is a part of the evaluation process, but certainly nothing weighs more than when you're evaluating them playing the game that we're going to ask them to do.
You know what? I'll add to that. One of the bigger impacts of COVID is, and Sean picked up on the cue, right, is when we're watching a player and you start with film when the stands are full. Sean did go, okay, this is an opt-out, right? Because, you watch 19 tapes. So that's probably one of the major impacts of COVID and the opt-out is, hey, this must be an opt-out because stands are full.
Right.
Did Cliff call you guys and let him know that he was upset about last year's draft and you guys wanted to up the ante?
No, you know what? Well, a couple things. I was glad Cliff was such a big fan watching us on Hard Knocks to know every detail about what went on. And then, I think he was trying to get me back for when I got him a couple years ago before he had coached the game with the Cardinals. And he had gone out to dinner with a group of people and Mahomes was there. And I had him convinced that he was going to miss out on that first overall pick. And he and Steve Keim weren't going to be able to draft Kyler Murray. So I think that was a delayed payback that he was trying to get me on, but I'm glad that he's was watching our Hard Knocks season so closely.
Yeah, it does seem like we've seen Pete Carroll without his shirt on, Sean without his.
Yeah, that's right.
Coach Shanahan to, join the party.
3 more, guys.
Les, with Jalen, kind of on a long-term deal, but Darius only on the 1-year tender. How important might cornerbacks be for you guys in terms of this draft? Sean and Les, please.
It would be, it's always important to add corner depth. And I do think like we have over the last few years, we've been able to draft, have that player not come in and have to, cover teams, number 1s or number 2 wide receivers immediately. But again, where we're at in the draft, 57 and then 88, 103, really at that point in time, you don't want to go into it going, hey, we have to have this position. That's where you may reach. So, but we're well aware of the corners and whether play inside or out, both just outside, whether Joe D and Coach likes what they've done covering kicks in college. And like you mentioned before, whether they've returned some or kicks in their time. So we're definitely well aware, but that's a position that's sought after. And a lot of good players usually go early at that position because it does take a special human to be able to go do that, play that position for sure.
Hey, Les, I just wanted to follow up on that too. Obviously, the cap was what it was this year, but as you guys start to learn more about what it might do next year, is Darius somebody who you'd like to begin talks with about something long-term to keep them in your facility, or at what point do those decisions start to get talked about?
I think it's obvious Darius is someone you'd love to be around for a long time. We'll definitely begin having those discussions both internally. We're a little bit tougher right now based on the variable you mentioned, and even tougher for planning because you're not necessarily sure how next year goes and what's going to happen there. But as Wade Phillips used to say, good players get paid, and Darius has proved to be a good player. So yeah, and I always say, yeah, we love to have as many good players as possible. Guys like Darius, cool his story. Give him credit, give our coaches credit for, developing him, and give, having the courage to put him out there, and give him credit for making the most of that opportunity.
Wrap up with Stu.
Hey, Les and Sean, you guys have been asked in a couple of different ways just about the impact of COVID on the evaluation process this year between the opt-outs and kind of the limited medical evaluation process. So there seems to be, at least my perception, maybe others, more increased risk as far as taking chances on guys with one or the other compared to previous years. How do you assess that risk? And then based on the way you've gathered information, how comfortable does that make you, or less comfortable perhaps, taking chances on guys who either fall into that category of opt-out or maybe have a medical history?
If I answered, I think Reggie Scott, his staff, our doctors, they may have more gray hair than I do. What I can tell you is the information Reggie has provided myself. I don't have as many gray hairs, and I think it's a credit to them for being able to orchestrate this, with all the adversity, if you want to call it that they ran in. So, but the information they've provided is as good as it has been in the past, and maybe even better at times with some people who didn't get to Indy per se, because it's been such a proactive, intentional process. But medical's a thing, right? You're going to playing football for a long time, high school, college. Them has started a lot of games. Some have been injured previously, things like that. It's a hazardous occupation, but that's the probabilities are very similar to what they've been in the past. Reggie, everyone who's been behind the scene, that's not just on our staff, to make this happen and get the information to us.
Last one, guys.
Hey, I just wanted to get your guys, I don't think we've spoken to you since Aaron Donald kind of went through an interesting week, and just kind of wanted to get your perspective on how that turned out and going forward with, if anything, what that means.
Yeah, I think Gary, Kevin Demoff, when he was asked about it, said it best. I think it's why you let things play themselves out. We had spoken to Aaron. I had spoken to Aaron immediately, and I have total trust in him, and we were very confident that the facts would come out and that this would be something that would kind of take care of itself as you just demonstrated patience and truly let the process play out, and that's exactly what it entailed. And it's kind of where we were at with it, and feel very fortunate. And Aaron was great, communicated very clearly, and love Aaron, and glad it worked itself out.
All right, thank you, guys.
Hey, artists, before we leave, how's the draft house?
It's nice. It's nice. People like it, Les.
Yeah, artists hadn't told you that's going to be where y'all hang out.
Shouldn't one of you guys ask Mr. Kroenke to buy this for the media house, the front office media house?
That's better than those tents artists put you in this fall. There you go.
There's food for everyone in the kitchen if you'd like it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate
Thanks,
it.
guys. Appreciate it.